Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Future Tech podcast series where it's me, Charlie Sell, the Group MD of Arrows Group. I'm interviewing Chief of Staff, Chief People Officers, Heads of Talent, asking them about their story, what's important to them when they're looking at the people aspect of growing their technical businesses, and the all-important career advice for our STEM listeners. So really pleased to have Tina Southall, who is the Chief People Officer, and Leanne Goldie with me, who's the Senior Talent Acquisition Manager of Gamesys Gaming Limited, a FTSE 250 global gaming company. And funnily enough, a company I've known for well over 15 years from when I first started recruitment myself. So I'm really, really pleased to have both of you on the show, and welcome.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Hi.
Hi to the listeners.
Great. So Tina, why don't we start with you and first find out a bit about your story, how I suppose you got into becoming a Chief People Officer and for technical businesses.
Well, it was kind of by accident, actually, which I'm not sure is the best career advice. Although maybe there is a message there in terms of like organic career development, right? Can work. So I spent 25 years in sales and marketing. And during that time, a lot of which was at Vodafone. So I was at Vodafone for 14 years. And during my time at Vodafone, I was approached by the group HR director. I'd always had an interest in diversity and inclusion and in working with people programs, if you like. I think as a line leader, it's not either you do tech or you do people. I mean, if you want to become a manager, you have to really be a very good leader and manager as well. And so I'd seen a lot of bad HR in my 25 years, seen good HR as well. So I had strong opinions, which I used to voice. And that brought me to the attention, I think, of the group HR director. And he approached me one day and said, we're looking for someone to head up diversity and inclusion at Vodafone worldwide. Would you be interested? And it kind of stuck in my head and so I kind of took a right fork in my career at that point. I was running a large sales team at that moment, 600 people. So I became a standalone subject matter expert. I had one person working with me, and I did that for 2 years. And then when I moved on from Vodafone, I was kind of like, what do I do now? I kind of trashed in a way my sales and marketing career by going into HR, but I wasn't an HR professional either. I didn't have the CIPD qualifications and so on. And I think this is the second point, right? So first point is organic, and don't lock yourself in. When you get to senior levels, try and remember that the skills actually are fairly transferable once you get to a senior level. And the second message is maintain a network, because I hadn't done a very good job of maintaining a network, but I had got a small network, and through that network, I reached out to someone and put on my note saying, I'm looking for roles. PS that can now add HR to my skill set. And he came back and said, we're looking for a head of HR, so come and have a chat to us. And so he was actually a boss 7 years before I joined Gamesys back in the Vodafone days. So maintaining that network is really important. Yeah. I think in terms of career opportunities, a lot of as you all know, a lot of jobs when you do a great job as a company, but a lot of people get work through who they know well. So I ended up, as an HR director at Gamesys 6 years ago. And one of my former bosses had always said that I'd love being in HR. I don't know exactly what. I think he thought it was something about that sort of you're influential, but you're kind of also you're doing good. Right? Yeah. And that's something that's been important to me through my career is to look after people, to nurture people, to develop people. And obviously this role gives me that, that opportunity. So I've really enjoyed being in HR, but I went into HR, very late in my career. Yeah. And I think you bring different things with you when that happens. I think you bring that business experience has meant that it's not just about HR administration, obviously, and it's about lobbying at the highest level on the board, around people's strategy, around culture, values, investment in development, learning and development, career pathways, making sure that people are nurtured at every stage, and innovation as well, and change management. So, there's lots and lots of very interesting areas.
Yeah, well, great. And like you said, coming from a sales and marketing background to then moving into HR, the transferable skills probably makes you much more of a rounded. You can draw on other aspects of your career and life lessons, can't you? When you have that mix, I guess.
Yeah, completely. And I think also it gives you, like I said, it gives you a different voice, maybe. I mean, I do worry that HR is still, even now, not given enough credence. I think that's changing.
Yeah.
I think that, it's still got a way to go, that HR was seen. And I think it was actually in legacy Gamesys, if I can call it that, before we became Gamesys Group. As the people you go to if you've got a problem, or the people you go to if you need some paperwork done, or you've forgotten your, tax code or whatever it might be, right? And actually, it's probably one of the most exciting parts of the business to be in. Yeah. And of course, through 2020, I mean, 2020 has been a year where HR's had a lot of pressure on it, but also lots of, I want to call it exciting, because I'd much rather we hadn't had to face these challenges, to be honest. But it is what it is, and it requires a very careful response from companies, very considered and thought through responses to try to look after that employee base in such challenging times. And we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot, particularly about how to maintain engagement and maintain fun. Our culture, we're a very social company, so that part actually has been taken away to a certain extent, but we've kind of tried to replace that with a lot more communications, a lot more engagement, a lot more ways for people to interact.
Yeah.
So we've kind of got what we call the 4 C's, which is clubs, communities, campaigns, and connections. And so, a lot of our employees have stepped up to kind of create their own channels, whether it's on Teams or employee networks, or just buddying, right? But maintaining connections, whether it's through a team or through a buddy network. And then campaigns with things like breast cancer awareness. So we've been celebrating Pink October, we're going to do November, and that sort of thing, where you can get visual images, from across our 17 offices across 13 countries, helps people feel very connected. And the other thing, of course, technology is super. I mean, anyone who's in STEM should be proud to be in that area, because, what would we have done without the technology? And it's evolving and expanding all the time. And so that innovation is, I think, going to be, it's just massively important for us as a global society, right? That's one of the things that's really clear from this year.
Yeah. Again, I couldn't agree with you more. That's and especially about technology as well. So thank you. And Leanne, we've welcome to the show as well. And it'd be lovely to hear a bit about your background, as you're, longer than I am, that's for sure. So you're going through the career journey of looking at people and talent. So let's hear a bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi. So I have been at Gamesys for 6 years, just over now, working in the talent team within Tina's area. But prior to that, I was at another technology company for about 5 years or so, and I just love tech companies. I think I can't see myself kind of working in any other industry, I don't think, going forward. I think they're just so exciting. There's so much innovation, as Tina said. There's just no boundaries to how far it can go. It's always going to keep progressing, and there's just always more that companies can do with it as the technology develops. So I've been working at the Gamesys talent team, recruiting across roles in pretty much every single department, every single area across those 6 years that I've been in the team. And also in the last kind of few years, developing or helping to develop the Gamesys graduate program, which we first launched within the tech team. And that's evolved over the last few years. We've probably been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now. And as I said, it has kind of developed over that time, but it's a scheme where we bring graduates into the tech teams. They rotate across different platforms to different areas. They get experience within all different areas of technology, different platforms, from front end through to back end, security, data. And they spend a bit of time within each area, so they really get to understand what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy so much, because they won't like every area that they rotate in, unfortunately, but it gives them a bit of a flavour for it. And then as we it's a 2-year scheme, so as they get kind of towards the end of the scheme, we then start thinking about what areas they might want to kind of end up in at the end, on a more kind of longer term basis. And so far it's worked out pretty well. Good feedback both from within Gamesys tech teams and from the graduates themselves. We've had graduates progress through the grad scheme and are now senior developers within their area, and they're doing really well. So it's been really positive all round, and hopefully it's something that we continue to do, and also look to expand it to other areas within and other teams within Gamesys as well, hopefully. And also apprentices. So that's another area that we've had within the Gamesys tech team is bringing apprentices in. They get hands-on experience. They do some classroom-based experience through a partner that we work with, and again that's worked really well as well in order to bring sort of more junior talent into the teams.
And that's brilliant. And so on the graduate side, because that, without jumping too far down the line of questioning, but what triggered you guys to start that scheme? And is it university graduates, or do you look at people from tech schools?
So what started us to start it, I think Tina and James initially kind of raised about it would be good to get some talent in. We were struggling at some points to get the talent that we needed at the more senior level, because the market was just so competitive. Everybody wanted the same developers that we were looking to hire. So we kind of thought, well, let's look at ways that we can still bring talent into the teams, but almost homegrown. So we developed them into the developers that we would like them to be. And so that's kind of where the idea started. And then we thought, well, if we do rotations, they'll get experience across different areas, and that makes them a more rounded developer at the end of the program, because they have so much experience, which you wouldn't normally get if you was hired into a tech team as a mid-level developer. You would just be within that one team. You wouldn't actually know too much about the other areas that you're working with. So that's where the idea came from.
I think people know we take people with some basic STEM qualifications, whether it's from college by the apprentice scheme or graduate. We find that's the best combination of foundation skills and aptitude. And obviously, people have come through that period of study, so there's application, there. And so I would say particularly the graduates have powered through the ranks, right? Because when was it we started it, Leanne, was it?
I think it was around 2015.
Right, yeah. So we've got graduates in the business still from that first intake.
Yeah.
And I think that's because particularly, younger people tend to job hop a bit more.
Yeah.
So 2 years, 3 years would be a typical kind of lifespan. So really proud that we've been able to develop people right through the levels. And like I said, that we've still got people, I remember meeting when they were kind of looked like they were about 12 years old. It turned out they were graduates. Sorry, I don't want to come over as offensive. It's because I'm so old, not because they. But they've done really well, and it's great still when I could see them around the office, see them still in the office, and to sign off their exorbitant pay rises. Because when you're a tech company in London, you learn that you have to be competitive with the markets. Leanne said you're competing with banks and the Googles of the world, and so we've got 300 tech people in London. At all levels, and so we pride ourselves on being a good employer, both at the package level but also in a more rounded sense.
Yeah, and on that rounded sense, because you mentioned earlier the 4 C's, which I thought was really, that's really impressive, and I really like that. And as you said, it's the awareness, cancer awareness month, and you're doing Colour Pink. So when you guys are thinking, because for our listeners, corporate social responsibility, joining a company that actually puts people at the heart of the business is super important. What initiatives, what ideas, what do you guys discuss when you're thinking about how to keep people at the heart of your business?
Well, I guess there's two angles here. So firstly, we are a gambling company, and so that's something we deal with, we tackle very openly within our employee value proposition, right? Because it's important to us that we don't have that people are don't see that they're comfortable with that, right? And Leanne, why don't you go first, and I'll talk more broadly around how we tackle that, if you like, in the hiring process.
In terms of around gambling or the hiring process in general?
What feedback do we get from people? I think people want to see you're responsible. I think, right, that's the first thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think people are either happy with what we do and that industry, or they're not. So we tend to not see those people come into the process, obviously. So the ones that we do, I mean, I'm very clear with all candidates that I speak to in telephone screening, whether that's graduates or more experienced people, just to kind of outline what it is we do and who we are as a company. And that kind of follows through the kind of whole recruitment process. You know, part of the assessment day, for example, on the graduate scheme is to come up with a game design. So you know that's related to a gambling related game. So yeah, it's really important that we're open about that, because we want people to know who we are and what we do, but also that there's a responsible side to it as well. So that's very much an important part of what we do. You know, we want to be responsible. We want to make sure that people playing on our sites are having entertainment. It's an entertainment type business, and that we have lots of different things in place in order to try and ensure that people are safe and playing responsibly on our sites.
I think that's very, very important to Gamesys. So, I mean, you've met Noel, our founder. Noel's was brought up in, his dad was a hotelier, and they had bingo. And so we're much more of a bingo company than a casino company. But, I think it comes down to, we put in place higher measures than other industry players, and we try to lead the industry. And I think that's very important in terms of our overall culture. As Leanne said, we're very much entertainment centered, and we're very fun and sociable and don't take ourselves too seriously. And our products and our culture both manifest that, but we have very strong business ethics. And so, those business ethic and our values are really, really central to what we do. So, one of them is be the player, which is about putting yourself in the shoes and minds of the customer, right? And making sure that everything you do is right for your customer, and that you're delivering the best possible entertainment experience that they could have. We have 100 chat hosts, which always astonishes people in terms of our scale. And we write a line of chat every 6 seconds. And so we have actually a very strong community of customers. Yeah. And a lot of our customers, it's their downtime, right? It's their over a cup of coffee, and that's been important to people again in 2020. But we've increased our level of checks to make sure that people aren't overreaching, if you like, through boredom. And that reflects internally. I think one of our other values is stay wonderfully weird, and that value is more about bringing your whole. That we like people that are slightly unusual or quirky, or feel that they can be themselves, right, in the workplace. So diversity and inclusion remains actually very important in Gamesys. But it's with a light touch. I think we're not sort of super politically correct, and we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we do a lot of work on unconscious bias training, like I said, on terms of supporting employees to form networks and communities of interest. And that also has helped during this period, because then they can bring content out to the wider audience. So our BAME network that was set up this year on the back of the Black Lives Matter movement is doing an amazing job, absolutely incredible job at really, driving the business agenda forward and driving the education of employees forward. So I think business ethics, but without political correctness.
Yeah,
very much us.
Well, great, and that's a great balance, isn't it? Because I always remember that sometimes a slightly different life lesson I was taught is when you're building businesses or having meetings, it's hard on issues, soft on people, i.e. you've got to be really clear about what you're trying to achieve, but you've got to remember that to get people along the journey, you've got to be able to treat them as individuals, and that relates to whether it's an industry or a management style or an ethnic minority. You've got to be treating it with a balance rather than just one shoe fits all.
Completely. And obviously, you know, Leanne, you can talk more to what we've done and to try and mitigate against any bias in recruitment, maybe.
Yeah, so as Tina said, we have the unconscious bias, which we obviously encourage as many people, especially if they're in the recruitment process, to attend. We have recruitment training, so we deliver recruitment training to all of our hiring managers or people that are part of the interview process, and there is a section in there around kind of unconscious bias and just, you know, making sure that people are aware of it, because I think most people don't really understand what it is, and just telling people to kind of put that kind of thing to the back of their mind and to give people the opportunity to interview, rather than making a decision on them within the first kind of 5 minutes. We've also done quite a bit around our job description, so looking at language that we use in our job descriptions, making sure that that's open and inclusive and doesn't include too many kind of masculine or female type terms that may put people off applying for our roles. And there's different tools that you can get that we've kind of experimented with and tested out that can help with that as well. So yeah, I think that they're the kind of key ones that we've done.
We work very hard to try and increase our percentage of women in our tech business, but it's not easy. And so, you know, it's still a mystery to me that I guess that it starts at school in terms of, and, you know, maybe I'm sure there is still bias playing out, right? Both at the way that children are brought up and the way that they're advised within the school around what careers are right for them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think it's very important that young people are given the message that they can do whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
And the female developers that we have in the business, and we have quite a few female tech leads and team leads and architects, are excellent, and they're really, really excellent. And they've got very much through the ranks on their own merits. We just don't have enough of them. But we work hard to try and bring as many as we can. But currently it's about 15%, which is much lower than it is in marketing, for example, where it'd be nearer 50-50 actually.
Although as a business for tech, that's very high, because obviously this is what we live. And the average is 5% or less. So to have 15%, you're actually doing very, very well. It's because it's funny. I have a 6-year-old daughter who's absolutely loves Minecraft, and I want to know how. I want to make sure that that doesn't diminish, that doesn't get taken away from her because she needs to then, you know, society expects that they should be ballet or other stereotypical things. Because you're right, it's got to be captured early and young within society that actually it is totally gender neutral, and people have got all the same abilities. But hopefully for a lot of our listeners, because the other thing that's really important to me in all of this is it's not about moving female developers from one job to another, because that's not increasing the pool of developers from either female or minorities. It's about how do you get more people into the funnel at the bottom? How do you get more women interested in tech or minority groups interested in it? Because that's where it's got to start from. It's not about trying to move people at the top.
Exactly.
So a lot of what you guys are doing is just fantastic, and that graduate program I think is brilliant.
Yeah, we would love to see more female applications for sure on a graduate program. It's very male heavy in terms of the applications that we get, and we've done some advertising in specific kind of female focused job boards, but would definitely still, and it does go up a little bit I think each year, but definitely not in the amounts that would like to see. Ideally it would be 50-50, but we're definitely not there yet in terms of applications that we get.
Well, I'm just so chuffed that you guys are looking at it as serious as you are, because it's something, as I said, when you have daughters or your children yourself, it changes your whole aspect on how important it is that companies embrace this. So So leading to the last question then, which is advice for graduates, so you've got obviously the graduate program. So if you were to give just a couple of pieces of advice for our listeners when they're thinking about applying for their first jobs, what would it be?
So a few points that I'd kind of consider on this is to kind of just research the companies and industries you want to work within, because obviously if you're working in an area and industry that you enjoy, that you have a personal interest in, then you're going to likely get more out of that career than going into something that you wouldn't. So do your research and then kind of tailor that application to the role. And this isn't just graduates, to be honest, this is for anyone applying for a job. The amount of job applications that I've seen or cover letters that have said somebody wants to work within banking or finance, which obviously isn't relevant to our industry, just kind of shows that sort of lack of attention to detail. So just tailoring the application slightly for each of the roles could go a long way. And even if that's just, we work in gaming, obviously, so put on your CV if you've created your own games or done anything in your spare time, like hackathons or anything that's relevant to the role that you're then trying to apply to can go a long way in your application. And I think just presenting your best self in the interview process. So, do your research, make sure understand the company that you're applying to before you have a telephone screening call or interview process with them, because that can go a long way. Just showing that you've got an active interest in that company that you're applying to can really help. And we talked about this with Tina, but in this world where we're kind of remote, just having everything set up, having all your technology sorted and ready to go, appropriate headset, good internet bandwidth, so that nothing can go wrong in that process on your side anyway, because that would obviously be really devastating if you got really, really far an interview process and then it kind of went wrong because you didn't have the right sort of setup at home. And I can see this kind of way of interviewing remotely is going to be here for a little while longer. So it's important to get that right for any kind of interviews, and just practice interviewing, whether that's with family or friends. Obviously, ensuring you can social distance, but you can practice interviewing remotely or face to face with people in your household, but just to get that practice in, because you may not have done many interviews so far, but just get confident talking about yourself. It doesn't have to go much more than that, but just confident talking about your experience and what you've done at university and what your interests and hobbies are. That could really help as well. And just perseverance. It's going to be a really challenging job market over the next few months, possibly a year. So just don't give up. Keep trying. Reach out to your networks. Your parents' friends. Where do they work? Could you get a little bit of work experience so you've got something on your CV to talk about? But yeah, just don't give up. Just keep applying. And eventually, you'll get somewhere. There's still companies like Gamesys. There's still other companies like us that are able to continue recruiting and hiring people. So there will be other companies out there. You just got to find them.
Yeah, and that was perfect. So thank you. I think that was really, really good pieces of advice there. And like you said, not just relevant to STEM grads either. I think that most of that is across the entire spectrum. So yeah, thank you. And Tina, anything to finish on from your side and thinking about career advice?
No, I think Leanne gave a perfect answer. I mean, the only thing I'd add is that, as Leanne said, particularly graduates won't have had many interviews. So that kind of sounds silly, but actually it makes a difference in terms of how you come across. And, interviewers will typically be looking for competencies, right? And they'll be looking for examples to pull out the competencies they're looking for. They will ask you to give examples. So it's always worth thinking and preparing that, that thing that you've forgotten that you did at university, where you created a campaign or a poster or whatever it is, or that thing you did when you sold lemonade in the summer outside your front door, or when you helped your neighbours clear their garden, of rubbish, and things that are completely, you might think of it as insignificant, is actually the sort of stuff that's gold dust in terms of revealing more about yourself, but also demonstrating to the interviewer, right, that you've got application and caring and entrepreneurial flair or whatever it might be. And so, you know, the more those can roll off your tongue, the better you'll come across, and the more rounded and interesting you'll be.
Yeah, again, just couldn't agree more. So, well, look, thank you both. That's been really, really interesting and lovely to hear, not just your views, but also how Gamesys are doing so much good stuff for STEM graduates and the wider field. So thank you both. Really good to have you both on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, so that's our Future Tech podcast series, another episode. The video footage is shared with our 16 universities that you will have on your career portal and on our Spotify channel that will be at the bottom of the link. So thank you everyone for listening to the show, and here's to the next one.